Hey, what's up everyone? Adam here with brahwegotthis, and today we're going to talk about basic mechanics that affect dungeons and trials. As a new player, you may be wondering, what do certain prompts mean when they pop up in dungeons, boss fights, and trials? Well, today I'm going to explain to you what each of them are and why it's important to know them. I'm also going to talk to you guys and gals about why other mechanics such as dodging, blocking, and other MMO-centric mechanics are very important to running successful dungeons and in-game content. These are all things that ESO doesn't really give you a tutorial on, and to be honest, it's why most players either lose a lot of DPS, die in dungeons, and fail to understand some simple mechanics in trials or in-game in general. This will help you understand why it's important to utilize these mechanics to your advantage, the difference in some of these mechanics, and the ability to react or know when a mechanic is needed. Before we get started, I just want to mention that if you want to watch me play live, I stream on twitch.tv/brahwegotthis on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday, starting at either 7 or 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you want to join my Discord, that is a growing community of new and veteran players called the Brahwegotthis, then come on by, and you can also join my guild, the Necrodaddies. All the links will be in the description. Last thing I want to mention that if you want to follow me on Instagram, I have one now. It is new due to some of you requesting that, and you can just find me there at brahwegotthis. I'll showcase fashion there and have video updates and other posts, maybe some memes as well. Again, link is in the description, so let's go ahead and jump into the video. So to start off, I'm not going to be able to cover every single mechanic in this game in this guide. There are a ton, but I want to try to cover at least the biggest ones that you'll see the most often. Some DLC dungeons and other in-game content has other mechanics that I would like to make more videos about one day, but let's talk about why mechanics are important in this game. This game isn't the type of game where you mash buttons and that will give you optimized DPS or help you stay alive. This isn't a fighter type game or a hack and slash type game. I think this is obvious to most people, but I want to clarify that. Your resource pool, like your health, stamina, and magicka, is your best friend. Certain mechanics in this game will decrease these, alter these, or simply just drain them from you if you don't know how to utilize some of the mechanics. So it's important to know when to dodge, block, kite, taunt, and other things. Also, there are certain commands or things you need to do as a player to interact with certain boss fights that have specific mechanics, and if you don't do these, the boss will usually do something really bad to your team on higher difficulties. We're going to break this down into two overarching parts. The first one being mechanics that you on your character activate or have control over per se. So in other words, MMO general mechanics like kiting, taunting, AoEs, HOTS, things of that sort. And then we're going to talk about mechanics that are reaction-based mechanics that bosses or other activities force you to do, like breaking free, interrupting, dodging, or blocking. So the first part is going to be, again, about MMO-based mechanics that usually stretch across all MMOs. These are things that you will see in almost any game that is considered an MMO. The first one I want to talk about is taunting. Taunting is primarily done and should only be done in higher content by the tank. What a taunt does is it forces a boss, an ad, or other enemy AI to attack you, the player, for a given amount of time. This is a key mechanic that tanks need to understand and need to utilize when tanking harder in in-game content. This is not something that a DPS wants to do to a boss in in-game content because likely their health pool won't allow it. There are close-range taunts and ranged taunts. One example of a ranged taunt is Enrage from the Undaunted line. This is a ranged taunt that every class of tank can use. Stay tuned for an Undaunted guide soon, hopefully. An example of a close-range taunt is Pierce Armor from one of the one-hand and shield lines. This requires you to be up next to the target you're taunting. Almost every class in the game has a taunt as well in one of their 3 skill lines. This is a crucial and major mechanic you need to understand if you want to tank. Next off is the mechanic called kiting. This mechanic is where you, the player, basically grab aggro from a target or multiple targets and basically perform a hit and run, for better terms. You constantly are moving around the room or area grabbing their aggro so they will stay focused on you but not on something else and not letting you die. An example of this mechanic is one I'm doing right now. In this boss fight for Fungal Grotto 2, this boss has a mechanic where if you kill all of her spider ads, she will gain this insane shield and it makes killing her take forever. So what someone has to do is get the spiders away from her. So in this case, I was doing most of the kiting and just leading them on the outside away from her. That way other players' AoEs or area effect abilities wouldn't hit the spiders. This mechanic is also used when trying to stall for time to revive someone in a fight, or when you are playing solo and need to not stand still and face tank a bunch of damage. This mechanic takes a little practice, but you should be able to get it down after enough times at it. Now let's talk about AoEs. I just mentioned these. I'm going to split these into 2 categories: HOTS, or heal over time effects, and DOTS, damage over time effects. AoEs are really just a broad term of these. AoEs just denote whether the ability is going to affect a large area or if it will be a single target ability or conal ability. So if it is a dot, then it is a damage over time effect. This is pretty simple to understand, but basically a skill like Eruption from Dragonite line is a dot. You place it down and it does damage over time in a certain area to those enemies. Now let's talk about HOTS or heal over time effects. These are the same thing as dots, but instead of dealing damage, they heal your allies that are in the area. I want to mention that most HOTS in this game are gradual heals. So if you're a healer, you want to know what the different type of heals are in the game. This is one of them. There's one more I want to talk about as well. That one is a burst heal. There are certain abilities in this game like fungal growth from the Warden skill tree that will be a burst heal. What this means is burst heals heal someone in a quicker interval of time compared to a heal over time effect. So an example of this is if you drop healing spreens, which is a heal over time off the restoration staff bar. In a graph term, it will be more gradual line of healing, but if you drop a burst heal, which you usually do if someone is about to die, like they took a massive hit, you would use one of your burst heals, the graph line would look like a mountain or more of a steep line. Burst heals are also usually more resource intensive, so always try to use these as a last resort. So just remember that when you want to heal over people over time, use a hot. When someone is low, really quickly burst heal them. If your whole party gets low, then throw a burst heal and a heal over time at that point. So the next thing is conal attacks or heals. Basically what this is, it's a skill that will do damage or a heal in a cone-like shape in front of you. Skills like reverse slice in the two-handed tree, fungal growth, and wall of elements are sort of a cone, but you get the point. It does damage in front of you, kind of in a path instead of like a circle. Next is channeling mechanics. These are skills that require you to sit and cast or channel the skill for a set amount of time. These take longer to perform, but usually have an added benefit to why it takes a few seconds to use. And they do this to balance it, because if it wasn't like this and you didn't have to channel certain effects, it would just be broken, I feel like. So next I want to talk about synergies. These are things I want to actually make a whole separate guide on in general, so look out for it. But basic overview of this would be, you'll see a command. For me, it's pressing X when an ally has a skill that has a synergy. One of the most common ones is combustion, which is from the energy orb skill in Undaunted. These orbs are the things you see floating at bosses that most of the time healers are throwing out. These give you resources back when you use the synergy. So synergies are important, and make sure to utilize them when you see them. They can be very helpful. A lot of times they'll do damage or they'll give you resources back. The last basic MMO mechanic that will segue us into the second part of the video is crowd control. This is something that is in a lot of games, not just MMOs, but basically you can apply crowd control effects, which are negative status effects on enemies that hinder their combat abilities. This is also something that can be done and will be done to you a lot from bosses and enemies. Some examples of this are the remote totem for Necromancer that has a synergy when activated will fear all enemies inside, which fearing means to basically run away and not attack. You can't necessarily fear bosses like this, but you can fear adds. Other CC effects can be slowing enemies, burning enemies, and silencing enemies. Again, all of these can be done to you as well, which is why now we will transition into the second part. So now we're going to go into the mechanics that you will have to use basically off of reactions from bosses or certain commands that you're going to have to do to help with mechanics. So the first one I want to talk about is interrupts or interrupting. This is a mechanic where you will have the ability to basically bash a boss or an enemy to knock them out of an ability that they are doing. Most of the time, this ability is going to kill your team quickly or have some other bad effect, or it's like a CC or a crowd control that they're doing to your team or you. The way you can interrupt on PC is clicking both of the right and left clicks of your mouse, and you will bash the target. I don't know what the command is on console, but you can remap this to whatever you want. This is also something done on a case-by-case basis in Dungeons and Trials. Sometimes the DPS will always need to be the one to interrupt these abilities. Sometimes the tank does it. It really just depends on what your group decides for the most part. Another example of this is in Maelstrom Arena, which is a single-player arena trial. There's an enemy that will basically shoot fire at you and your pets and do tons of damage if you don't interrupt. Another one is also from the Maelstrom Arena, when this troll slams the ice platforms. If you don't interrupt that, he will break the platform. Most abilities that are interruptible, it will usually prompt you that you can. If you don't know, try it, and if it doesn't work, you know it's not interruptible. Most indications of a skill that has the possibility of being interrupted is abilities where the boss or enemy is channeling something, like I said before. or charging something or standing still, doing something really bad to your team usually. But again, some of these aren't possible to interrupt, so you'll just have to heal through some of them. There are also ways to interrupt enemies with ranged abilities. One example of this is Crushing Shock from the Destruction staff line, and another example is Venom Arrow from the Bow skill line. You can interrupt something far away with this if you can't get over there in time. This is a mechanic that a lot of new players don't understand usually and don't really know about it until someone tells them about it. That's why I want to let you know, because there are tons of these mechanics in the in-game content and most people don't utilize them when they need to. It will help your runs and clears go a lot easier by knowing mechanics like this. The next thing I want to talk about is the mechanic of breaking free from abilities that enemies or bosses put on you. These can range from numerous things, like I said. I won't be able to go and cover all of it in this video, but there are a lot of these. But some effects that you can break free from are some like knockbacks, some stuns that other players put on you or bosses put on you, disorients, and fears. These, along with various boss mechanics throughout the game, will prompt you to break free from. Again, you can map this ability on what keys you want, but doing this will consume some stamina, so keep that in mind. For stamina characters especially, keep this in mind because that is going to dip from your DPS resource pool. One fear that comes to mind is the Wayrest Sewers 1 boss that fears you from him, where you can break free and get back in the fight. Otherwise, you'll run away until the fear is over. And conveniently, sometimes into a tent that you can't get out of and you have to get unstuck from, but we won't go there. I'm a little salty from that bug still. Some players, when first starting out, don't understand that a lot of things can be broken out of if you have the proper stamina available, which we will get into why resources and other mechanics are so important here soon. Now, the next mechanic that you'll have to do, going off the last one, is dodging. This is a mechanic that you can map to any key, but default on PC is double tap in any direction on WASD. Some players don't like that because it will accidentally dodge and they don't want to consume stamina from that. But dodging is important because if you have the Code's Combat Alert add-on, or just in general, if you have that add-on though, it will help you. It will actually help you see a mechanic and when it tells you to dodge, which is really nice. But if you don't have that, you still want to dodge. Some abilities need to be dodged though because they can't be blocked, and it would be better to dodge than rather to face tank something. Sometimes, like in Veteran Tempest Island, which is a dungeon, you need to dodge roll out of her AoE ability on the final boss, or it could be bad news for you. Also, another important note with dodging or dodge rolling is it breaks you free from some like small and light crowd control. For example, being slowed by spiders anywhere in the world, you can dodge out of this and go back to normal movement speed. This is important because that type of CC can get you killed very quickly on higher level content, and it can be very, very annoying. This leads us to the next important topic related to dodging in CC, and that is blocking. Blocking is so important in this game, and I would call this probably the most overlooked and not used mechanic by players in this game starting out, and even players that have played a while. Blocking is essential in the Elder Scrolls Online, even when you're a DPS. I've seen a lot of DPSs not block enough, instead they'll dodge roll. Dodge rolling when stacked up will deplete your stamina in a heartbeat, especially if you're a Magicka DPS with not a big stamina pool. The reason blocking is important is you can block some crowd controls that enemies put on you. That means if a boss or player tries to CC on you, you can block this instead and not roll away. You may still take damage, but you use less stamina if you time your block correctly. This is a big factor increasing DPS actually. The more you understand when to block, when to roll, and when to break free will help you not deplete needed resources to do DPS. And just imagine running around with slow CC on you. It's going to affect you in some way, and it's going to affect you to not be able to do damage efficiently. This is something, like I said, that people always overlook. I'm not perfect at this by no means, but if you can understand why this is important, it will help you out a lot. Also to note, there are a few skills that can't be blocked, which are considered unblockable skills, which makes sense. Most of the time, you will find these in a dungeon at least once, but also from other players if you're playing PvP. The last mechanic I want to talk about is, you could call it cleansing or whatever you want to call it, basically just removing bad effects from you, debuffs. This is something you need to do when you have a debuff on you, like I said, that is particularly needed to be cleansed. Like, you can't break out of this, you can't do anything to get out of it unless a teammate cleanses you with a skill or you use some sort of mechanic where you were at in a dungeon. The mechanic I like to use for an example is the final boss in Banished Cells 2. He will lift someone up in the air sometimes, and they will come down with either a blue or red debuff that slows you all to hell and does some other stuff. Depending on the color, red or blue, like I said, you need to cleanse yourself in either the red pool for the red aura or the blue pool for the blue aura. This is getting cleansed, basically cleaning yourself off. But this is important for some scenarios. Now, like I said, there are other mechanics in this game, guys, that I could go over that range from trials, dungeons, and other activities, but I'm going to leave that for separate videos. I cannot cover all that possibly in this video. I wanted to try to cover some of the most common of these that you will encounter, and I believe that all of these are pretty common. That being said, if you have any questions or concerns, you can always leave me a comment in the comment section. I always try to respond as quick as I can. You can also come by the Twitch chat on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday on twitch.tv/brahwegotthis around 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, sometimes earlier, but it just depends on the week, and you can ask questions there. You can also come and join our Discord and our guild, the Necrodaddies. We hit over 110 people the other day in the guild, which is crazy. We have a lot of people in there, and we would love to help you out if you have any questions. So please come and join. All those links will be in the description. Also, if you like this content, make sure to like, subscribe, and heavy attack the bell icon if you want to be notified when I release new content. But until next time, guys and gals, thank you guys for your time and patience and all your support. Just remember to have faith, be great, and I'll see you guys on ESO.